Good evening, good Erev Shabbos, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me. There are certain types of individuals that are going to love Parshas Truma, Parshas Tetzaveh, and then the virtual repetition, which we find several weeks afterward, Vayakov Pekudei, when we read about the construction of the Mishkan. People who love geometry, people who love engineering, architects, individuals who appreciate artistic design. These are the types of people who get very, very excited and naturally interested and motivated to learn and to study many of the details that we find in Parshas Truma. Otherwise, some people find it a bit challenging when we come to read the details of Parshas Truma, Tetzaveh, and again, the repetition in Vayakov Pekudei, because we don't fully appreciate the different dimensions, the configuration, the Torah's detailed description of everything from the materials to how it is constructed and where it is to be placed. And many of us appreciate finding something which is naturally meaningful, a lesson, a value which speaks to us directly from the text. And when it comes to these parashios, we sometimes find it a little more challenging and difficult. However, I believe that the same meaning, that same sort of enrichment that we can discover in all of the parts of the Torah. Perhaps we find it to be more natural and easy in Sefer Bereshis, maybe the first half of Sefer Shemos, which include many stories, drama, descriptions of people and their reactions in certain situations. That same potential for walking away with meaning exists in a parsha like Parshas Truma, but we have to dig a little deeper. Sometimes we have to scratch the surface to find some of that meaning. So I want to share one example. There are countless examples. I want to share one which comes from the end of Parshas Truma, actually the very, very last pasuk. The last pasuk in Parshas Truma, we're going to read once again about all the different parts and the configuration of the Mishkan. And the pasuk says, "L'chol klei Mishkan b'chol avodaso, v'chol yidei seidoso, v'chol yistos hachotzer nechoshes." The pegs that were used to hold the curtains down and to anchor them to the ground. So the Torah tells us that these pegs were made of nechoshes, of bronze. So on this pasuk, Rashi says as follows. He says, what were these pegs for? What did they do? So Rashi says, Asuyin liyurios ha'oel kaliyachotze. They were made for the curtains that went over the Mishkan, as well as the outer courtyard. Kshurin b'meisarim saviv savim b'shupuleim. They were tied with cords around the lower edges of these curtains. Why? Because we did not want the wind to go ahead and to cause them to become lifted up. After all, the purpose of the curtain was to cover, to conceal. And then Rashi says as follows: I don't know, says Rashi, if these yesedos, these pegs, were actually stuck into the ground, or maybe they were basically tied to the lower edges of the curtain. The chavdan, and because of the weight of these pegs, they held the curtains down so they would not sway in the wind. There are different girsos in Rashi. The common girsa that we have in our Rashi goes on to say that he prefers the first approach, because the word yased, peg, seems to imply that it was actually tachuv ba'aretz, that it was actually stuck, it was implanted, if you will, into the ground itself. So this is an interesting question. And again, for those among us who are interested perhaps in engineering and architecture, so you can appreciate the different possibilities. And you may realize that one approach may have maybe more effective, maybe, sort of the better, the more ideal design, if you will. But Rav Moshe Feinstein in the Sefer Darash Moshe points out that there is a deeper message over here, right? This is what I was alluding to earlier. There's a deeper message. There's something for us to walk away over here. And that is that Rashi is pointing out that the concept of pegs, of something which is used in order to anchor something strongly to the ground, so that same concept may be applied to every personal struggle that we all have in our Avodas Hashem. Essentially, the question which Rashi is posing is, what can keep a person grounded? What can protect me from the many spiritual threats that I confront each and every day? How can a person best ensure that he not be swayed, if you will, by the harmful winds that threaten to discourage our commitment, our fidelity to Torah? And the answer that Rashi basically is providing us with is that there are two different ways of looking at it. And Rav Moshe suggests that both of these models are essential for our success. Firstly, a person has to be sort of thrust into the ground. A person has to attach himself to a supportive communal structure and infrastructure. And if and when a person is firmly rooted in a religious community and is surrounded by friends, by family, by neighbors who have a very strong commitment to Torah and to Torah beliefs, so then I am not likely to be swayed, if you will, by the winds of the day, by the cultural forces that may conflict with the Torah's way of life. But that is not enough. It is not enough that a person be tachuv ba'aretz, that a person be anchored and planted in the ground. If I really, really want to remain steadfast in my commitment, if I really want to ensure that I will be able to withstand the very, very strong winds, both the Ruach Matsuya, the common winds, and certainly the Ruach She'ena Matsuya, the things that come about from every once in a while. Each generation has its own unique trends, which really, really threaten. So then a person has to be, as Rashi says over here, kaved, a person has to be weighty, meaning a person must engender within himself the internal strength, the resolve, and the determination to withstand negative influences. It's not enough that I am part of a greater community. It's not enough that I have great family and support and teachers and role models. I can't rely on my communal religious structure and identity for the support and grounding that I'm going to need to grow spiritually. I have to develop inside of myself the resources of confidence and fortitude so that I can flourish even outside of the supportive framework of this community. We find many examples within Torah, and I would say within our liturgy as well. We refer to these two different domains, if you will, of our religious identity. So, for example, we say each and every day in the Shiras Hayom, Zeh keli v'yanvehu, Elokei aviv arel mimenhu. I react, or I refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as being Keli, my God. And I also say, in this very same pasuk, Elokei avi, the God of my fathers. Well, which one is it? Is it Keli or is it Elokei avi? And the answer is it's both. Because it's not enough. It's not enough that I say, well, this is the Masorah, this is the heritage that I have received. It's not enough to say, this is what I was taught in my home, and this is what I learned in school, and this is what I see in shul. That's important. But in addition, I have to develop a personal relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It has to be Zeh keli. This is my God. This is my personal relationship. Think about it. Every time we begin the Shemona Esrei, what do we say? Elokeinu ve'Elokei Avoseinu. It's not enough that we refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu, our God. And it's also not enough to say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokei Avoseinu. It's Elokeinu ve'Elokei Avoseinu. You are our personal gods, and you are the God of our fathers. There is a tradition, there is a heritage, there is a Masorah. Again, there is that part of my life and my experience which is tachuv ba'aretz, which is very, very firmly implanted in the ground. But at the same time, I take upon myself the responsibility to hold myself down, to fortify myself so I can further make sure to hold myself firm enough so I will be able to withstand the sway, and that when the winds come and sort of threaten that commitment, threaten my resolve, I am able to remain firmly attached to the ground. Now, this past year, we have had to learn, each and every one of us, how to find meaning and fulfillment outside of our shuls and schools, the formal infrastructure of our community. We have come to appreciate, I hope, that both are indispensable, that both domains are essential in life. It's human nature that when we immerse ourselves exclusively or even primarily in one particular way, we orient ourselves in a particular fashion, we run the risk of becoming too comfortable in that mode. And we say, well, this is the way we've always done things. We become so used to a certain style, a certain way, that we fail to appreciate the value in the other. And so a year ago, I was messaging constantly immediately after the first lockdown, those first days after Purim, in which we were forced to go ahead and basically shutter our shuls and return to our homes and to stay inside and to find inspiration in our homes. So the message that I constantly try to promote is we have to cherish and appreciate the potential of the home. What could be accomplished outside of shuls and schools? We don't only have to be within the formal, familiar confines of the communal structure. And I hope each and every one of us, some more, some less, but we've all have come to appreciate the value of the home. We've all come to appreciate that while there may be lots which is missing when we can't come to shul and daven together b'minyan, there is at the same time what to discover about davening, about that experience, about that relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with ourselves, with our family, dafka from within the home. And here we are almost a year later. The world is far from normal, if you will. But now I find it's important to remind ourselves how important it is to value and to appreciate how essential the institutions are, not only for our communal survival, but for our own personal survival and well-being as well. Yeshivos and Batei Knesses, places where we gather to daven, to learn, to grow, these communal structures are also indispensable. They are essential. As Rav Moshe teaches, this last Rashi in Parshas Truma teaches that if we want to be able to withstand the winds of change, we want to be able to withstand the trends that constantly threaten to knock us over, the things that we face each and every day, which really, really test our commitment to the tenets of our faith. So we have to remember that there are two essential components to remaining firmly grounded. Number one, we have to be implanted in the ground. We have to attach ourselves to those communal structures, literally, and in a more figurative sense, to appreciate the value of communal entities. But at the same time, we should never, ever forget that that is not enough. It is also essential that we figure out how to weight ourselves down, that we figure out ways to carve our own path, to come to appreciate HaKadosh Baruch Hu through our own experience, our own eyes, our own perspective. It's not only Elokei Avi, but it is also Keli. It is not only Elokei Aboseinu, but it is also Elokeinu. And so therefore, as we sort of come full circle and we near the 1 year anniversary since our lives have been so significantly changed in so many ways, I hope that we can begin, as we continue to emerge from this experience, to appreciate how both of these aspects of our religious identity are essential for our long-term survival. In order for us to thrive as a community and to thrive as individuals, we have to remember that just as the curtains of the Mishkan were grounded, were anchored to the earth by pegs that were either implanted in the ground or weighted down by heavy pegs, Rashi teaches both of those approaches are a value in that situation. And as Rav Moshe teaches our own personal lives, both of them are necessary. They are essential in order for us to truly succeed going forward. Thank you for joining me this evening. Wishing each and every one of you a wonderful Shabbat.